It's 1932, and evil is about to be thrust onto the world like never before. Now, a year from now, Adolf Hitler is about to be formally appointed as Germany's new chancellor.
And in the shadow of the Nazi flag, outside of their window and across the street, a family lights their menorah for Hanukkah for one of the last times. This light is important, and perhaps more important today than ever before.
On this episode of the Jewish Road podcast, we talk through why we celebrate Hanukkah today, and especially why it is important in the face of evil. Hey, welcome to the Jewish Road podcast. My name is Matt Davis, and I'm here with my dad, Ron Davis. Say hello.
Hi, folks. I'm here. I'm here.
There you are, yes. Well, thank you for making your presence known. Here in the Jewish Road, we've been walking the Jewish Road, and right now we're walking through a little bit of the holidays here. And you can't help but notice wherever you go, there's holidays. It is the most wonderful time of year, and you know, you probably have, as you're walking through the mall, or maybe you're seeing all the lights, you're thinking, oh, the Festival of Lights. Finally, Hanukkah is here. Or maybe not. But we want you to know that beyond the latkes, beyond even the menorah or the dreidel game, there's something very significant about this holiday. And we really want to connect that, especially for the time that we are in today.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. The times today, the times then, the relevance between the two.
Yeah. So we're going to get into that in a second. But before we get really intense and really serious, let's just take one moment. Okay.
To go back to the Catskills.
There you go. That's your favorite place. We got to actually do that. Like, just go there.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. But for now, give us a taste. A little Jewish humor.
Okay. Let me tell you about a story here that is about a Yiddish mama. It's a Jewish grandmother.
And by the way, you remember my last joke on the last podcast, and you did not think it was all that great. So
okay.
I'm expecting great things with all the criticism I've been getting lately.
Oh boy. Okay, folks, here we go. The Yiddish mama here.
Yiddish mama.
Last year, just before Hanukkah, Miriam, who is the grandmother, the Yiddish mama, was giving directions to her grown-up grandson who was coming to visit her with his wife. And she tells him, she's giving him all these directions. You know, they have to give directions to everything. So she says, you come to the front door of the condominium complex. I am in apartment 2B. And then she says, there's a big panel at the door. With your elbow, push the button 2B, and I will buzz you in. Then she says, come inside, the elevator's on the right, get in, and with your elbow, hit 2. And when you get out, I'm on the left. With your elbow, hit my doorbell. And Grandma, he says, listen, that sounds easy. Her grandson, whose name is Jonathan, says to her, but why am I hitting all these buttons with my elbow? And she says to him, you're coming to visit empty-handed? It's good, no?
No, it's all right. It's just okay. It's all right.
All right.
They're such nudges, these grandmothers. They're like, well, make sure you do this, make sure you do
It's
that.
a part of being Jewish.
Nudge is another word for bossy.
Yeah.
And you don't have to be a grandmother.
Pushy.
Yeah, pushy, bossy. Like they're constantly imparting their will upon you.
Yeah.
I have a 13-year-old that's just like that. But anyway, we digress.
She's not even a grandmother.
No, but she's gonna. Boy, is she gonna be a.
She's in training.
I will be long gone by then.
Oh boy!
Can you imagine that day? All right, let's get into this. This is important. Beyond the tops and all the fun dreidel games and all the presents and all that stuff. By the way, real quick, did you, when you were a kid, did you have presents for Hanukkah?
Oh, did I have presents?
Yeah.
Listen, when Hanukkah came, we went to Bubby's house.
Uh-huh. Bubby's grandma.
Bubby, his grandma.
Like a Yiddish mama is also a Bubby.
Bubby. And I got my present. It was called Hanukkah Gelt.
Ah, nice.
Gelt is money.
Yeah.
I got a silver dollar.
Oh, that's it?
That's it?
Oh, not like cars or new shoes and clothing shopping?
No 10-speed bikes, no nothing.
All right, I'm going to tell the 13-year-old that.
Yeah.
see what she says.
Yeah.
All right. So beyond all of that, there's actually something incredibly significant, and it's even I think it supersedes the holiday and some of the celebration. There is a story within the story that I think is much bigger, and. What we talked about in the last podcast as we went through the history of Hanukkah is really there's always been an enemy against Israel. There's always been somebody who's tried to take our people out. We joke about it a little bit, right? Like they tried to kill us, we won, let's eat. But there is something that is incredibly significant about the hostility towards the Jewish people, and if only it were in our past. I think is maybe that's the title of this podcast.
If it only were in our past, that's a good title. It raises its head in every single generation.
Yeah, Marilee, she sent me something she saw on social media.
Yeah,
I
saw that too.
You saw that?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I'm impressed. But the question was, show me there's been like a history of anti-Semitism without telling me about it, right? And you go to Wikipedia and type in the history of anti-Semitism, and you'll see every century throughout humanity, there has always been people who have come against.
It's almost every decade within every century.
Yeah.
So you're impressed. I was depressed when I read it.
Yeah. I was depressed about that because, again, if only it were in our past, but it's still very much a part of our present and, unfortunately, our future too.
Yeah, and we'll talk about that in a minute.
Yeah. So we enter into this, and one of the things that we said in the opening here was that there was this picture. We started out with Hanukkah in 1932, and you can maybe find this if you go to we'll repost it up on our social media. Go to the Jewish Road, but I want you to listen to this. I think it's so significant. It's Hanukkah. It's 1932, and it's in Germany. And this is the post. It says, "It was on a Friday afternoon right before Shabbat that this photo was taken." We'll also put the photo up online. My grandmother realized that this was a historic photo, and she wrote on the back of the photo that their flag wishes to see the death of Judah, but Judah will always survive, and our light will outlast their flag. Pause. Number one, define what's Judah. When it says that their flag wishes to see the death of Judah.
That's the Jewish people.
The Jewish people, right? Yeah. So, and if you can see this picture, you're inside of a home. There's a windowsill, and there is a Hanukkah menorah sitting on that windowsill, and just behind it, outside in the house across the street, hanging there, is the Nazi flag.
Yeah. Kind of a horrifying sight, and a sight between the two that really clashes.
Yeah. And so she writes on the back, their flag wishes to see the death of Judah, but Judah will always survive, and our light will outlast their flag. And I think about this. One of my favorite places to go in Israel is Masada. And, the story of Masada, you go up there, it's the year 73. It's been 9 months in Rome. This is the last holdout before everything in Israel is totally destroyed. And there are people who are taking their lives rather than being caught, right? And going into slavery, to Rome. But they take, man, I almost don't want to say this because you got to go to Israel with us to do it because it's so powerful there. But when they became a nation again in 1948, they go up to Masada, they excavate, they go into the synagogue of Masada, and they go into the scriptorium, the place where they would hold the script, the scrolls, and they dug up in that spot and they found the scrolls. These scrolls that had been buried for almost 2,000 years, right? And unlike a Bible, if I close my Bible, my book, you don't know where I read last, but if you roll a scroll, you know where they did last, right? And They found two scrolls there. One, they knew that they read Deuteronomy 30. It says that the Lord will bring you back into the land. They knew on their last day, on their last night, even as it felt like that flame, the people of God, the Jewish people, Judah would be extinguished by Rome. It was that, and it was Ezekiel 37, the Valley of Dry Bones, right? That God will breathe new life into these dry bones. But those were the two parts of the scroll. It just seems that our people have this perseverance and this knowledge that though they slay me, we will conquer. And it has to be based on the goodness and the supernatural sustenance of God.
Yeah, and it shows that constantly in the midst of the suffering, there is a hope. There's a light at the end of the tunnel, and that's what they're looking at. They're not sure exactly how all of that fits. I mean, we're 40 years post Messiah and resurrection, and yet they're holding on to the promise that's in Deuteronomy. It's in the Torah. That's what they have.
Yeah. Well, this post goes on to say, and I'll put all of this on a blog post. I'll put it somewhere. I'll put it everywhere. It says, my grandfather, the rabbi of the Kiel community, was making many speeches, both to Jews and Germans. To the Germans, he warned that the road that they were embarking on was not good for Jews or Germans. And to the Jews, he warned that something terrible was brewing and they would do well to leave Germany. 1932, right?
Yeah.
My grandfather fled Germany in 1933 and moved to Israel. His community came to the train station to see him off, and before he departed, he urged his people to flee Germany while there's still time. This is Yehuda Mansbuch. Is written on the back of the photo, Hanukkah 5692, which was 1932. Judah dies, thus says the banner. Judah will live forever. Now, today, this menorah lives on. In fact, if you go to Yad Vashem, which is the Holocaust Memorial in Jerusalem, this menorah belonged to the Posner family.
Right. And it's there at Yad Vashem.
Almost.
Except for...
Yes. So that menorah and that photograph are on permanent display in Yad Vashem, which is the Holocaust History Museum. But each year, the menorah is returned to the family for 1 week when Rachel and Akiva's descendants continue to light the Hanukkah candles using the same menorah that was brought to Israel from Kiel 90 years ago.
Wow.
Just stop the podcast. What else do you need? That's a powerful story.
That is right there. And yet, we look back at that and we can take some warnings from that even today, can't we?
Yeah.
Yeah. Probably many of our listeners are familiar with an author and speaker. His name is Eric Metaxas.
Yep.
He wrote several biographies. He wrote a biography of William Wilberforce. I think probably one of his best is the one that he wrote on Bonhoeffer.
Yeah.
But he recently wrote a new book. It's called A Letter to the American Church. And in that, he draws parallels to where the German church was in the 1930s, that exact era that you just read about with the menorah and the Nazi flag across the street. He draws parallels between that in the 1930s, which was very grim. In fact, the rabbi said in many of his speeches, you need to get out of here. And he did. He went to Israel, didn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so Eric Metaxas draws some parallels, and it's a terrific book. I would promote it, and I would say get this and read it. It's a good one. But he draws parallels between the German church of the 30s and the fact that they were silent in the face of evil, and asks the question whether the American church of our time may be guilty of the same thing.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of an awareness that we have to put before our eyes and ask ourselves the question, because, listen, with all of the things that we see taking place, and we see them taking place in this country, if the church does not stand up, the church is the conscience of the nation. And if they don't, the nation will be lost. But I think that God has his plan in terms of where he is taking us and what he's doing. But in the meantime, and we're not getting political, right? This is not political. It's not political because God talks about what do we do in the face of evil. Whenever there's evil, we have to speak out against it. And political, call it whatever you want. I've always said that Jesus was political. But the fact is that it's time for believers to really stand up and be a voice for what evil is taking place in the country, the rise of anti-Semitism that is taking place. It is rising at a tremendous rate in New York City. And we need to think also about what is taking place with the Jewish people and Israel. And we need to take a stand, and we need to let our voices be heard with that.
I'm impressed with, I know you really wanted to go really political, but we can push this just a little bit. And I think this is important because, you know, out of all of the people in the world, today there's what, about 15 million Jewish people?
Yeah, we just got back to where we were before the Holocaust.
Right. So before the Holocaust, about 15 million people, about 8 million in Israel. So there's now finally more Jews in Israel than anywhere else in the world. It used to be there were more Jews in New York. Is that what
New
you're
York,
gonna say?
right? Yeah.
Yeah. So we're at 15 million out of a world that I heard that we just crossed 8 billion. So I don't even have I need a calculator to figure out the math, but not very many.
I think below 2% of the entire world population.
No, it's less than that. It's way less than that.
Less than 1%.
Yeah, it has to be. Now I have to get a calculator out. As you're thinking about that, like that is, let me see. That would be 8, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3 divided by, what is it? It's no, it's 15 million, and it's divided by 8 billion. That's a lot of zeros. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3.
I don't think your calculator will hold that many.
Oh, I can't. It just put a number up there
Yeah.
that I can't. It's all right. We'll figure that out later. Yeah. But all that to say, it's nothing. It's a blip on the radar. And then we have, so I mean, maybe it's just because this is what I see on social media and it's my feed, right? Like my feed has, you know, all of these Jewish things, and I look at Marilee's and it's all horses and happiness. But, and boy, is that the truth. But I look at this, and anti-Semitism is rampant around the world.
Yeah.
This small little people group is so hated by everybody. We did a podcast a couple podcasts ago. We talked about this. The fact that the church does nothing in the face of anti-Semitism is a huge stumbling block now and historically for the Jewish people.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
look at that and they say, well, they could have done something. They should have done something. They did nothing. And even the church in Germany, Metaxas, he writes about this, right?
He talks specifically about this, that, you know, in fact, he says that because of that, he is compelled to speak out.
Yeah.
And he talks about the Jewish people in a part of this book as well. You know, so this is really an important issue. You know, I was just reading some statistics. I think maybe it was Barna that put them out. I'm not sure about that, but I'll double check myself. But in New York City, just in this last year, there was an attack on Jewish people, an anti-Semitic attack on a Jewish person within the 5 boroughs of New York once every 16 hours.
Oh.
That's huge.
Yeah.
And you know, a lot of those attacks, anti-Semitic attacks, don't get reported.
Yeah.
So,
well, and
are,
even scarier. So 15 million Jewish people in the world, and then you have a bozo like Kanye West. Now his name is Ye, right?
Yeah.
And he is spouting off, and obviously like he's lost it, but he's spouting off anti-Semitic slurs, and he's going off on you know the Jewish people, and he's spewing forth. But the scary thing about that is he has more than twice the amount of followers on social media than there are Jewish people in the world.
Wow.
In just one rant, he is reaching more people than there are Jewish people in the world. It's not helping the cause.
Yeah. Well, the enemy is hard at work, and I think he's hard at work because he knows he's getting close to the end.
Yeah. Well, and that's what I would say is if I've seen anything, if I've learned anything over the last 3 years, as we've gone through this era of the pandemic and COVID and all that, is that evil has organized, and evil is. I can't believe sometimes how coordinated evil is. Like worldwide, the organizational effort put on by the enemy is pretty amazing.
Yeah. Well, what you're seeing and what you're referring to right now in the last couple of years, this has been brewing in the back laboratories for decades, maybe 50 years. And they have been waiting for an opportunity, and the COVID pandemic provided the opportunity. They saw how well they could control people through fear.
Oh, now you just went political.
Oh,
Yeah, but
it's the truth.
You're holding back. You're holding back, though.
Yeah.
Yeah. So here's, I got to meet a German pastor, and there were the death marches that went throughout Germany, and what his church started doing was they called it the March of Life, and what he said that our fathers were guilty. Our fathers in Germany were guilty of the sin of silence. And he says, we are not going to stay silent anymore. I think we have just two passages that we really want to look at. I want to look at Isaiah 62, and then you're going to wrap us here with Ezekiel. Yeah?
Okay.
All right. So I want you to just hear this. It's Isaiah 62, it says, for Zion's sake, I will not keep silent, and for Jerusalem's sake, I will not keep quiet until her righteousness goes forth like brightness and her salvation like a torch that is burning. I love that against the backdrop of that Instagram post of the light, right? We're gonna light this menorah in the shadow of the evil, the Nazi flag, right? And nations will see your righteousness and all the kings your glory, and you will be called by a new name, which the mouth of the Lord will designate. You will also be a crown of beauty in the hand of the Lord and a royal diadem in the hand of your God. But then it says, on your walls, O Jerusalem, I have appointed watchmen all day and all night. They will never keep silent. You who remind the Lord, take no rest for yourselves and give him no rest until he establishes and makes Jerusalem a praise in the earth.
Oh.
It's an invitation by God. You're not going to wear him out, but give him no rest. Do not be silent all day and all night. These watchmen, that is our calling. That is what we're supposed to be doing in this age, in this era. And I mean, how long ago was Isaiah written that now it's still just as poignant as ever, if not even more so today?
Yeah. And you have to realize in all of this that God's purpose is to bring everyone to know him. I just recently finished reading through the book of Ezekiel, and what really jumped out at me this last time I read through it, many times, but this last time, what really jumped out at me, and I started making a note by all of these verses, so many that he says that in his judgment of the nations, his purpose is making myself known to them in the land of Egypt. In his judgment to restore Israel and all that he puts the Jewish people through, then you will know that I am the Lord. In his judgment of other nations, constantly says, you shall know that I am the Lord. You will know that I am the Lord. That is the whole purpose of God, that we will know him. And I need to bring this to a conclusion here, but as we go through Ezekiel, the last chapters from chapter 40 to 48 are a description of the millennial kingdom and the millennial temple and all the measurements, and I'm not going to go through all of that. But when we get to the end of chapter 48, the last verse of Ezekiel, he says in verse 35, the circumference of the city shall be 18,000 cubits, and this is the important part, the name of the city from that time on shall be Yahweh Shammah. In other words, what that is, it shall be the Lord is there. It's not going to be Jerusalem, it's going to be the Lord is there. It's going to be known as that because you remember previously, if you read through Ezekiel and beginning in about chapter 8, 9, 10, 11, the glory of the Lord departed from the temple in Israel, but now the Lord is there. He has returned, and his dwelling will be there at the temple in the very center of all of this. And so the ending of the story is that the Lord restores. Israel will know him. Those nations who believe will know him, and they'll enter the kingdom. And this is what we are looking forward to, the faithfulness of God in fulfilling all of these promises.
Yeah, and I think, we kind of stumbled on it, but if only this was all in our past, but this is very much our present and it's very much our future. I'll also say there's not many places on earth where you're going to get this perspective. And that's why we decided, we've got to talk, we got to say something. And that's why we started the podcast. That's why we started this ministry. And I believe our best days are ahead of us, but we're going to have to go through a lot of worse days before we get to those best days.
Yeah.
And whether there's economic issues, whether there is violence, whether there is all of these things, that the hard things that we're going to have to encounter, that does not mean that we are called to put a pause on the Great Commission.
Right.
That we are still called to go out there, and even more so now and in the future, that message needs to get out.
Yeah, making disciples beginning in Jerusalem and Judea and Samaria and the other part of the world, of the earth.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because I've been in Jewish ministry for 47 years. Ever since I became a believer, that's where I had to be. And it's interesting because all of our efforts have always been along the lines of proving the messiahship of Jesus as the Jewish Messiah out of Old Testament scriptures, prophecy, and all that. And that's good. And we need to do that. We need to keep doing that. We need to not neglect that. But the times that we are living in now, we need to also focus on the fact that he has not only come in the first time, but he's returning. And that's what we're getting at as well. The Messiah has come, and he's coming back.
Yeah. So what we do here, I think, is significant, and that's why we are still involved in doing this ministry. And what's also interesting, we can see underneath the hood. We can look at the analytics, and what's really great, we know that there's a bunch of you. Obviously, our main audience is here in the States. There's 5% of the folks that are listening to this right now. You are in Israel, and we say to you, Shalom and Hag Sameach. But we want to be able to go out and to be a light in this festival of lights, in this feast of dedication. And it's why we end every podcast by saying, Sha'alu Shalom Yerushalayim. We say, pray for the peace of Jerusalem. And we, as believers here in America, we're calling out, we know most of you who are listening, you are Christians who go to a church, but the call is do not keep silent. In this season of Hanukkah, we remember that God once again restored and protected his people, and he will continue to do that. But what we really want to do is we want to say, number one, thanks for listening, but we also want to say, we want to keep doing this, and we want to ask you to partner with us in this, that we link arms together, that we join together. Year end is coming up. And we are a 501c3, so you can make a donation all the way up until the end of the year, and that can be tax deductible, and that's great. But what it does is it allows us to be able to sit down and do what's necessary here, and keep the lights on for the ministry, so that this message can go out. I saw you nodding at me. Are you doing something? Did you want to say something?
Yeah. Well, no, I agree.
Okay, good.
We need that support. For us to be able to get out there, for us to pay the bills of the ministry. There's quite a few of them. And so we're thankful for those who are partnering with us.
Yeah. So now more than ever, it's important that we partner together. We hope that, by the time you're listening to this, it is Hanukkah. At some point, we're going to release this during Hanukkah, hopefully before it ends. But you can also just join in the celebration. You can watch some videos, and it's like a mini course that you can go through. But go to thejewishroad.com /8 nights, the number 8. And then nights, and then you can follow along. You can kind of see, and we give you some tools to understand this story. And obviously, we have a whole litany of podcasts and blog posts and all of that. But you can also go to our website, and up in the top right-hand corner, it says donate. And you can also go there, and you can make a donation. You can do that one time, and you can also do that recurring, and you can support us. So we are thankful. There's a lot more coming up. We have a lot of plans, and listen in a podcast or two as we wrap up season 3. We're going to let you know what is to come for 2023. So I think it's it. We're done. We wanted to be short, and we lack the ability.
We're Jewish. What can you say?
we tried so hard. We just...
Well, imagine what it would have been if we didn't try to be short.
Yeah. Well, and for Zion's sake, we will not keep quiet. We won't shut up.
Yeah.
That's it. All right. Well, thanks for listening. And until next time, Sha'alu Shalom Yerushalayim.
Yes, we do pray for the peace of Jerusalem. They will prosper. We love thee. Shalom.